Does anybody have any questions of Joe?
Yeah, I just had a question about the pension, Joe. If you could just go through that, some of the comments that you made about the pension. The fact is that we're adding the amount that we're adding to the pension,
Right.
and just explain some of the terms about it being fully funded now, how much of the amount that we're adding into the pension this year, represents, for lack of better words, a catch-up, and how much. Just explain the process.
The amount that we're adding, or budgeting, I should say,
Right.
to the pension plan is what the actuaries recommend that we contribute to be at a decent funding level. Okay. Now, don't forget, we have 3 pension plans. The town employees, there's the police, and then there's the school non-certified plan. Okay. The school system has already calculated that in their budget, so we're just looking at police and the town employees, other than Teamsters. Teamsters have their own pension plan, which is part of our total benefit budget, but it's through collective bargaining, what we're contributing to them.
Okay, now, my question is this now. Is this going to fully fund?
No.
No, well,
No.
what, okay.
Okay,
Because
it brings
that's
it-
where I'm somewhat
Okay,
confused.
if
'cause I
the
thought
fully fund, we would be at 100%, which is
Right.
unrealistic. That would mean that everybody would retire tomorrow.
Right, but I thought during your presentation you used that word. Those words,
No,
but that was.
no, I don't think I did. Fully
we're gonna-
funded to the recommended
Okay.
recommended
That's the
contribution
The
level
recommended contribution.
for this
Okay,
budget
right,
year.
Right,
Okay?
okay.
If I did
Yep.
misstate myself,
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, I just needed
And
clarification, yeah.
just to put some people's mind at ease, where are we with the relative plans? I think we've made some significant strides in the police department.
Yes, I can read them if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be fine, Joe.
Yeah.
Confidential non-supervisors, we're at 82%.
Okay.
Employees Association, which is the GEA,
Yeah.
we're at 79%. Confidential supervisors, that is 67%. The GSA is 91%. Firefighters are at 63%. Communications, 97%. So the total plan, remember I said there were 2 plans, there are
Right.
just sub-plans within that, is 80%.
Okay.
Okay, the police is at 70.
Right.
Okay, and that's before the recommended contribution. Okay.
Okay, so looking at the whole package in terms of the actuaries,
Right.
we're fully funded.
No, we have, we're,
The recommendation.
So
for this
their
year.
recommendation.
But
Okay.
I have,
Right.
I have a variation on this question if
Yeah.
I can jump.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because, I mean, you asked almost exactly the question I was gonna ask, and that was partly, is there some catch-up in there, but even more important, is there gonna be a similar recommendation next year, or we just
Yeah,
don't?
every year,
every year.
every year. Now, the thing I will bring to your attention,
But
and
we haven't seen that
But
contribution.
We have
Not
not
at that level.
contributed at the recommended
this is,
level.
this is the first year that we're funding, or proposed to fund, I should say, to the recommended level. When we had years where we weren't that successful in putting a budget together, meaning that it came in too high, that would be one of the areas we would cut back. Okay, this year again, I'm gonna repeat this, because of the success we've had in the refunding of $18 million worth of bonds, it would be foolish not to fund.
And it's almost a
pension
wash,
plan.
it's almost like for like.
Exactly, exactly.
And essentially, though, and the point is, next year, if we contributed 772 next year, that's not gonna be an increase.
772 is only the increase.
Yeah, I know, that's
Yeah.
the increase this year, but that'll be
The
built into the budget.
increase from last year.
And that'll be built, my point is, that'll be built into next year's budget.
Yep.
It'll be built into the calculation
Yes.
they
Right.
do next year,
Right.
so
Right. So-
it depends on how much we contribute plus what the market does.
Exactly, that was my next point.
But as long as we're funding at their maximum level, we're reducing any major increase in
Spikes.
future years because we're starting to
smoothing out-
smooth out.
we're smoothing out those-
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's probably safe to assume our contribution is a little higher since our performance in the pension funds hasn't been as good over these last few years.
Oh, they've been higher every year,
Right.
every year.
Yeah, the last couple of years haven't
Yeah.
been great, that's for sure.
That's right.
Okay. So this is a catch, it was sort of that, we keep coming back to the same.
Yeah,
There's a
we
little
do.
bit of a-
We-
there's
There's
a
we
a
do
catch-up
keep-
here.
in
yeah.
there, but it's not gonna be continuous as long as we
And don't forget,
keep it.
the calculation, this is done as of July
Last
1,
one, 2012.
2012, because that's the end of the pension year, okay? I hope we get in prior years where we had not funded to the full recommended contribution, that's been calculated into
Into
this
this,
number.
right.
So
Okay.
this
All
is
right.
the catch-up
All right,
Mm.
all right.
for the years we didn't fund, but it doesn't fund at 100%.
Right. And
But
Lou-
what
and
not,
Lou-
100% is not necessarily recommended. I mean,
No, it's not,
Not at
no,
all.
no.
I mean, the actuaries aren't
And
looking for that.
that's
though,
another, we're using words of art when you
Right.
talk about 100%, what
Yeah.
that means.
Well, budgeting is an art, it's not a
Yeah.
science. And
That's
both-
true.
Both Lou and Kimberly make a very good point. We're s- in, we're biting the bullet this year on the pension thing to prevent future significant spikes to get us to funding levels that are more in line with appropriate targets.
Assuming the market doesn't tank again and then
Right.
everyone's in trouble.
Well, yeah, but I think we heard earlier that the year-to-date return is now at,
Above
The tar-
where,
above
Seven,
the
above our
target.
target.
7, 8, yeah.
is
I
now
mean,
above the
you know,
target.
that's
And that could change next month.
7 months,
Right,
all right? We don't know, okay?
good.
I have a couple questions.
And then, don't forget, excuse me, John.
Sure.
Don't forget, we're finally easing out of the 2008 hit,
Right.
because you do a 3-year
A year
smoothing.
rolling
of it.
average,
Yeah.
that's being
Right.
bumped. That's right.
And
John,
that was a big hit.
Well, first I'll just say, in this economic climate, this is a very solid budget and quite an accomplishment. I do have a question about the recycling being taken off of the accounting for the town budget and going into its own special fund. Is that particular program self-funding?
Yes,
Okay,
that is, that's all part of the transfer station,
okay,
which is funded by Guilford and the town of Madison, because it's a 2-town operation.
all right. And then,
And so is the recycling's always been a 2-town operation, but for some reason, it's always been on our budget. We said, what are we doing? And I got to credit Sheila with taking that out.
all right, my last question, I sense a little bit of optimism about state revenue going forward, both from the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen. I'm just kind of wondering, though, how you maybe justify the optimism, seeing as how the state revenue appears to be.
The
Decline.
numbers or the amounts that you see in your documentation is what we receive from the state. Okay, now that's based on the governor's budget,
budget, right.
okay? Now it's up to the General Assembly to do something about it, okay? Our state representatives, our 2 state reps and our state senator know how strongly I feel about getting our fair share, and they're very good at helping us with that. And I'm no different than any other first selectman or mayor in the state.
Right.
They're all fighting for their piece.
They are.
Did
At
you
least-
want to bring up?
At least on paper, the governor's recommended budget to us is neutral. The
Basically.
drop is in the school building grants. It's $5,000 to $8,000 or something. It's nominal. And there does not appear to be some of the hooks that there are in some of the other towns are experiencing relative to where you have to spend the money.
Right.
Is that correct for us?
Yeah, that's correct. The only one that is restricted is on the LoSiP money,
It's always been restricted.
and that they doubled,
Yeah,
yeah.
good.
But we can't use it anyplace else, but LoSiP
Which
projects. Yeah.
We gotta know.
Which
I-
which
Mr.
Chairman.
follows me, it never covers our projects anyway, so we're mixing funds to cover it anyhow.
No, as a matter of fact, if you look at page 3, John, that's what we received from OPM and from CCM on the,
Okay, maybe I may be confused. I did take a quick look at the bottom line here. Total state revenue looks like it's going down 187,000.
that's correct, and that's because of the
4.7%.
school construction
Okay.
grant under the old projects of
So
176,000.
take that out.
That's no longer there.
relatively neutral. Now I follow your comment, Mr.
Right,
Chairman.
yeah, we knew that was happening before the governor announced his budget this time around,
We
so.
knew that about 3-4 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was gonna
we've
happen.
known it for a while. But you're right, Jonathan, it is a hit.
Without a doubt, you know.
Anything further?
I was just thinking of road maintenance in lieu of the hit we all took in the last week or two. Are you comfortable staying with that, with the numbers you have, or your equipment held up pretty well, the roads did not deteriorate beyond the projected deterioration?
We're just starting to see the road now.
I'm just wondering whether that $100,000 figure is.
That 100,000, they originally put in an increase of 163,000. We brought it
Right,
down.
that's what they wanted.
That's what we brought it down to 100 after speaking to the Director of Public Works, and he was comfortable with that. Who's
Okay.
also our town engineer.
Just to follow up on that, did that result in some kind of schedule for complete road maintenance in terms of years?
You would think.
Is that how that was determined?
That additional 100,000 is not going to stretch out
Well,
or shorten the intervals between
that'll be in the capital.
when we do a certain road. You know, it's either 7 or 10. That is to do the shim and leveling, which is in addition to the surfacing of the roads. Okay? First Selectman Lynch, may rest in peace, years ago, put in a bonding issue. I don't remember the amount, Matt, do you remember? Several $1 million.
Yeah.
That he got all the
Three. I thought
roads
it was
up to where they should have been. It's unfortunate we never continued that, so we're starting to.
Going back to that. Good. Anybody, anything
What?
further?
One last one.
Certainly.
Is there a possibility that we might be able to take advantage of lower interest rates further with our, with some bond refunding?
There's a possibility, but I can't, without the schedule in front of me, I can't tell you when. Sheila, do you know offhand?
I don't think at this point there is.
Okay.
Unless rates drop even further than they are now, which is, I think, somewhat remote.
And if they do drop further, that means there are a lot of other problems that we want to be facing.
I was thinking
Which
the
is
same
why
thing.
Then your pension plan.
Pension
The
funds?
same thing.
There goes the pension.
Did you want to address it all, or you want to wait till next time about the car tax?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that a little bit. For those in the viewing audience, the governor has proposed the elimination of the automobile tax, which is a rather significant revenue generator for municipalities, particularly Guilford. Currently, we have about $180 million attributed to motor vehicles on our grand list. And the elimination of that, amount of grand list is pretty significant in terms of revenue. It's about $4 million in revenue.
Is it 3 point, we had the assessor figure
Yeah.
out, for any vehicle 20,000 and over,
Right.
this came to 3.7 million. That's a big hit,
3.7, yeah,
20,000, Joe, or 28,000?
20,000.
that's assessed value.
Assessed value.
Assessed value.
Market
28
Right.
is fair market value,
Market
excuse me.
Right, right.
And the problem here is the overall expenses on the part of the town don't go away because we eliminate car taxes. And the obvious solution here is to transfer the burden from the automobile tax, or cut $3 million, Jonathan, your choice.
Understood.
3.7.
$3.7 million worth of taxes to real estate and personal property stuff, business and property tax. I did, on the back of a napkin, I did a little, well, not really napkin, but on the spreadsheet that we all work from, that Sheila puts together, and I will pass out to you guys, I'll email to you guys. And I didn't have a chance to check with Sheila. I took a number of, I said a wild guess, that 80% of the automobiles in this town were assessed at 20,000 or less. It's a stakeholders, which basically, if you take 80% of that 1.8, it's about 1.4 million, 140 million rather. Which dropped the grand, and then you adjust the grand list. And I'll work with Sheila tomorrow to make sure these numbers are close to accurate, but that alone, by transferring the car tax, would shift a little over 1 mil, would add 1 mil to the budget that was presented to us tonight. the budget that was presented to us tonight suggested that the new mill rate would be 23.06. By taking 80% of the grand list for automobiles out of our taxable rolls, the increase to the mill rate would go to 24.06, fully another mill.
Right.
All right? However, again, this, therefore, thus, as someone used to say to me, this will come down to an individual evaluation of the impact. All right? That 1 mil on 23 is somewhere around 4%, little less, little 4.5%, right? So you can figure on your assessed property value, that 4% increase in your taxes on your home versus how much you gotta write a check for every July 1st for your automobile taxes. There will be winners, there will be losers. Clearly, the burden shifts to those who have more expensive homes. So it will require some kind of analysis on an individual basis. And Joe and I had a conversation about this last week, where we talked that this is really akin to what we try to do during reval, which is explain in some level of detail what it really means and what the impacts are. You have a question first?
I just want to clarify, did you mean it'll fall on people with more expensive automobiles or homes?
Homes.
Homes.
Homes. People with more expensive automobiles will still pay some automobile tax.
Plus the additional
increase.
Plus the
property
addition.
tax.
Correct.
Here's the
The other people will
other,
have a wash.
There are
Potential.
there are
Not
some.
potentially,
Yeah.
potentially a wash, excuse me.
here's the other factor, which is, I think, unique to Guilford. It will impact the senior tax program.
Yes, it will.
Because what happens is now the benefit that the participants receive because of a mill increase is going to be much larger.
Yep.
And when you take all of these benefits that are forgiven or frozen,
Right.
that is going to breach the cap. And then, that's why it's so unfair to the seniors.
Seniors, yep.
Because then what'll happen, we'll have to prorate
The
the
awards.
additional amount that exceeded the cap to each one in the program.
Correct.
So it does hit, and that's where I think it hurts the most, and that's what concerns me more,
Right.
that issue. But I think I'm in good company when I see all the big city mayors fighting this. And this happened, this proposal, I believe, also was put forth by Governor Rell had to be about
Right.
5-6 years ago.
Right.
And it was defeated in the General Assembly.
I
Okay.
think
Now-
I'm gonna spend a lot of time worrying about this.
No, I wouldn't either. The thing is that,
It does beg the question.
you know who it helps? It helps the people who don't own property. And that's, and
Well, there's
have
no-
cars that are,
There's no
on the
question
20.
this is a very populist proposal on the part
Yeah.
of the government.
yep, so I'm not,
The thing that has always concerned me is when populist ideas are put out there, you have to look to see who benefits. And you just mentioned, it's the large cities, the mayors who are fighting this. My assumption is that they've got some level of control over their legislative delegations, not always, and they'll rule the day, usually with something along this line. However, the interesting part of the argument, the flip side of that, during a municipal election season coming up, is that those who stand to benefit the most from the elimination of the car tax are traditionally the people who live in those very same large cities. So it's a very interesting issue. And the reason for that is, my car in Guilford, I pay $300, I'm making numbers up here. Well, not really, it's pretty close. I pay $300 a year in taxes. That same car in New Haven is $900 a year in taxes. And that's what's at the heart of this thing. But I also, with a smirk on the chairman's face in the back, this gets us part of the way towards where he wants to go, which is the whole issue of addressing property tax. just not very elegantly. But I think that the misconception here is, some people say, well, we're just not gonna spend that money. You know, we're gonna lose 4 million in tax dollars. We're not, just not gonna spend it.
Where?
It's a shift.
That's all it is.
It's a shift. And if anybody thinks it's anything other than that, they're foolish. And I tend to
Call me
agree.
foolish.
Yeah,
Obviously, not all of it, but it's
Right.
possible to consider budget reductions
of course it is.
further.
Of course it is. But that's on the heels of your earlier comments, suggesting you thought this was a very well-crafted and justified budget, given these economic times. So,
Yes, and he makes my job very difficult.
Anything else on that, Carter?
No, I just want to say, hope you consider the budget as presented, and any questions when we get to the public hearing, be happy to
I'm sure we'll have. a
to
few.
answer. Matt, I do, and I will pass this out to your board if you want. It's an email from the assessor. I asked him to do some analysis. It's a one-page thing with some like chicken scratch on it.
That's fine.
If you lady and gentlemen would like it, I will
Please do.
pass it out to you.
Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Well done, thank you, and
Thanks,
your
Joe.
department.
Thanks, Joe.
And also, Chairman Bloss and all the work that went into their budget presentation too. Where are we? We're back to committee reports. Mike, anything on the high school? We've got a meeting coming up on the 26th.
Yes, very, very quickly, two things. February 25th, which is next Monday, there is a construction document, or I guess you could say final document, presentation, which will be made to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. 7 o'clock, Adams in the Choral Room.
Yes.
So that's where that is.
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock. I just checked it. And tonight, if I wasn't here, I'd be at the high school building committee meeting, because they are meeting tonight to receive the estimate at the CD level. And it'll be, if it's not public now, it'll be public shortly, but they're within range. They're, I think it's 1.5 mil over, which is actually very reasonable. It's a good estimate. I mean, you'd like to be right on it, but that's not unattainable. And so it, again, looks positive, so.
Good.
We'll hear more about it next week.
Excellent. Lou, did you have something?
You have new business if you're on the new business.
Capital reports, capital reports. Old business.
Didn't we need to discuss the cap on the senior tax relief?
Yes, we did. Do we have,
Nice job.
We can discuss it, would you like to?
yeah,
Mhm.
we don't.
I don't,
Is there a motion to add to the agenda?
It's old business.
Old business.
It's coming off the table.
Did we table
We
it?
tabled it.
Is
Yeah.
there a motion
We did.
to take it off the table?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
this is the,
Thank you.
no, I wasn't here last month, so I don't remember, and I didn't check the minutes to see if you actually approved the local, the Guilford elderly tax relief rate.
Yeah, I think we
I
did.
believe we did the
Okay.
rate, but not the
All right.
cap.
The current cap is $1,050,000. And we set that before we actually know what the calculations are. They're completed in I think by May 15th. So last May, the actual number was 984,000, and we had set the cap at $1,050,000. So we didn't reach the cap. It looks like the average is about 10% a year, the growth. I think that I would probably stick to just maybe $100,000 over the current cap, which would be $1,150,000. The assessor tends to be, it's more conservative, you would say, and he would rather see a higher number, because it does involve a process should you reach the cap, and then it has to be decided whether we're going to prorate the benefit or not. And then, so, he'd rather have that leeway of having a higher cap, and this way there's no question that the benefit isn't prorated. But I think that should probably come back to this board for a decision if it reaches a level that's higher than the cap.
Okay, so what do you recommend we set the cap at?
So I think that the cap probably should be 1,150,000, which if it's 10%, even on $1 million, which was 984,000, it would be 1.1 million. So we still have a little leeway in that it's 1,150,000.
Right. And the corresponding impact to the document we have in front of us for consideration for the budget, in terms of a mill impact?
I think that I estimated $1 million for what we set the cap at, and what I estimate the grand list
Two different
adjustment
things.
is two different things.
Yep.
The cap is a high.
Right.
I think I used $1 million.
Which
So-
would be $22,000 or $23,000 in tax revenue.
Right.
So we're talking rounding here. Not going to impact that 22 or 23.06 to any significant
No.
degree.
Run
I'm-
run that again. How's that million translate to 22,000?
22,000 in revenue.
In revenue.
22.36 is our current mill rate.
Additional revenue, right?
Right. Which won't dramatically impact that projected mill rate number.
It won't at this point, especially because we're also estimating for the Board of Assessment Appeals number. There's other estimates in here that are very dynamic.
Right. That's right. So you're suggesting a cap of 1.15.
Right.
I'm comfortable with that. Does anyone want to put that in the form of a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question.
I have some questions
Sure.
too.
On when this program was last reviewed. I know this has come up from time to time, and the committee was formed within the last 5 years, I thought, or at least there was some discussion about getting together. Do you know when
The relook was 3 or 4 years ago, when we reconvened the,
Actually,
At least.
actually, we looked at it.
I can join you if you want.
Yeah, about 6 months ago.
was it 6 months ago?
6 months ago. There is some tweaking that we're gonna do, probably for the next application period, which should be
Tweaking?
next February, yeah.
Meaning
Technical,
like eligibility?
no, just technical, language, okay?
Okay.
Nothing
is
on
there a report
eligibility.
from the committee?
No, sorry?
Is there a report from that committee?
No, not yet, no.
Okay, there will be.
Yep,
Okay, because I'm sure some folks are interested in the thinking that goes into maintaining this and, you know, some of the eligibility levels. I mean, I think it just needs to be reviewed, I mean, from time to time, and make sure we're giving this thoughtful analysis. It is an enormous amount of value, and I don't think anybody would suggest doing away with this by any means. And certainly no one would suggest doing anything, I don't think, to the people that are already in this program. But I mean, as with many programs that seem to have a tendency to sort of increase over time, I mean, I can imagine there might be some interest in figuring out a way to change the future eligibility for this, or some way of capping the growth. I mean, $100,000 a year, you project it out long enough, to steal one of Jonathan's arguments, it can become significant.
Actually, I have some
$100,000
questions
a
too
year.
along
What?
those lines.
That's, there's no
It's
benefit
no-
of
there's no-
$100,000 a year.
Well, we're increasing that cap, and which eventually translates into a revenue hit. I mean, I realize it's a
No,
choice.
no, there's no
no.
cost to the town.
It does not translate into a revenue here.
Not at all.
We need to
It's
use
a
only.
redistributed tax.
Redistribution.
is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way we got the numbers, you know, Mr. Maz and I were on the original committee back in, was it 99, 2000, whenever it was. The-
2001, yeah.
This was an attempt, and I think one of the most successful attempts in the state of Connecticut, to build in some means testing into what is inherently an unfair tax, and that is the local real estate tax. This was a mechanism to create an income cushion, if you will, for people, and the number that we picked was at the time, I think in the 2000 census, was the median average household income in Guilford, which was at the time 100,000, something like
It's
that.
in the 90s.
Yeah,
95.
and that's what we picked as our number. Now, the interesting thing is that in the 2010 census, that number is going to be around 110,000 per average household income. So effectively, our income thresholds are lowering themselves, if you will, below the mean household income in the town of Guilford. So it is becoming a less, it is not open to as many people as it would have been 10 or 12 years ago. But there's still, you've talked about a $100,000 increase here tonight in the cap. That's in a budget of, what did we, 80 million?
83 million.
Okay, I mean, all right. That doesn't bother me. I think this is a great program. And I think the level of assurance that you've given the senior citizens in this town that make less than that average household income of a Guilford resident has made this town a better place, period. I am absolutely convinced. I think this is the best program the town of Guilford has done in recent, let's just say recent history. I think it is if supported, and yeah, it does redistribute. That $1 million in taxes is paid by other people. It's paid by businesses. It's paid by me. You know what? The $20 or $40 or whatever, I haven't heard anybody complain about that, to be honest with you. I think that people recognize that without this program, we might well have greater education expenses because people are not moving maybe as quickly as they might have 20 years ago. The seniors don't use a lot of services. They just don't. And the more seniors we can keep in town, putting aside just that it makes us a better community, that it keeps the fabric of the community together, that we don't have people moving out because they can't afford to pay the taxes on the place they grew up in or the place they got married in and raised their children in. I think there's tremendous societal value to that, putting aside just the dollars and the impact, I think, on the education budget and the town budget, which I think is overall positive. So, you know, we are looking at it. We did meet, I don't know, 6 months ago, talking about some kind of implementation issues. Want to make sure that it's being implemented fairly and rationally. But you know, I applaud this board for continuing to support it, and I think the Board of Selectmen has come to the same conclusion, and again, applaud them as well.
I couldn't say it any better, obviously. But it was one thing that I'm proud of when serving this town was bringing this program to light. We have approximately 800 households on the program. There are more than 8,000 properties that are taxed. So spread that out, like Mr. Bloss just said, spread that difference out to the other
90%.
remaining, 90%. It's not a large amount. The thing is, in relation to the school, we might very well have to build another elementary school had this program not been in effect. Now, don't forget, unfortunately, for some people, they're not going to be on the program forever. The program, I'm sorry, but
that is a fact.
that is a fact.
It has an
The program,
has an actuarial
It is.
component to it.
the
Other
program.
people are gonna,
Other people are going to.
fill it. Well, you make a
Well, no,
good
the
point
thing,
how
the
the
thing is that the
eligibility
program
is
does not stay
self-correcting.
with the property.
Right.
It's with the individual.
I have some
And the amount
questions
of money
too.
that we're talking about, I mean, you know, the amount saved by one person in a year might be $50. It might be $100. It might be $150. So it's not like it's not that their taxes get wiped out.
No,
It's
they
just
lock
that they
in.
increase. Right. So if you were talking about a house with it's not a meteor.
It's the lift, no.
It's the emergency budget.
That's right. So if there's a house with
Eject.
$5,000 taxes and a 3% tax increase in a year, do the math. What is that? $150.
Right.
So that's
But
the
it's
amount.
cumulative. Over 15 years, it can become, and it's a big savings
sure.
for that person, and that's a good point.
No,
That keeps
and-
them in their house.
And you know, and this is one of these areas that not only is there the savings, the emotional value of knowing that your taxes are not going to go up even though your income is fixed is so much more valuable than the actual money. And you know, and I think I've heard more than one senior tell me, you know what it told me? It told me that I was important to the town. It told me that the rest of the people here that are working don't view me as something to just, you know, you're fine, you raise your kids, you're not contributing to the PTO anymore, we don't care. They feel, you know, I hate to talk like Dr. Phil, but they feel valued, you know, they feel like they're part of the community, and we care about them. And I think this is just a fantastic program.
Now, Bill, can you tell me, do you actually support this program, or I'm trying to...
I was gonna say,
Get off the
Now,
fence.
if you might just entertain a question, though.
I'd be happy to.
The program obviously has some very good qualities to it, and it does benefit our seniors. But I look at the program, and I do think it may have an Achilles heel. And where this concerns me is with the eligibility. And what I'm concerned about is not necessarily the income level, which I see may be in line with Guilford household income, average Guilford household income, but with the lack of an asset test. I've been reviewing the rules of the program, and there doesn't seem to be any restriction on eligibility based on assets. So I was confused. I thought,
Well,
could someone with maybe $2 million or $5 million net worth actually qualify for the program?
Sure, it's income driven. But the theory is, I think, that even for somebody who's got, say, a $2 million house on Sachem's Head, now, might they have a household income of less than 90,000? I suppose, maybe. There are some people in Sachem's Head, I think, in the program. But you got to remember, they're paying property tax on a $2 million house. So they're not exactly starting at the same place that somebody in, some other part of town is starting with. So that if they're paying $20,000 a year on the property to start, that doesn't go down.
Now, Bill, in my mind, I thought of the program, and I thought a lot of our seniors end up on a fixed income, and they may, struggle to pay large property bills after their working years are over. But it's a little harder to support the program when I think of someone kind of sitting with a $2 million, $5 million net worth, enjoying a frozen property tax.
Well, that person who's, say, paying $20,000 a year in taxes, that person is not getting town services anywhere close to $20,000 a year. And given that the eligibility at that income level, I think says that they have to be in town for 20 years.
20.
So that person has paid in current dollars maybe $450,000 in income or from real estate taxes. They haven't got that level of services from the community. I'm okay with it.
It's based on a joint income, too.
It is based on a joint income.
Joint
income.
But then I hate to, I'll be less philosophical for just a second. There is also an enforcement component to this and an administrative component to it. In a perfect world, all taxes would be based on, maybe this isn't perfect, but taxes would be more based on ability to pay than it would be on either assets or income or whatever. But it would be a combination. The real estate property tax is probably the worst single way to raise money for a municipal budget that's imaginable, because it's based on, you talk about net worth. Okay,
Bill, forgive me, but are we going on a tangent here?
no, we're not. Not at all.
You asked him about
Not
the
at
other
all. You asked about means testing, and I'm trying to answer that. If Mr. Egan lives in a $500,000 house that has a $450,000 mortgage on it, and he has no money in his checking account, he pays the same taxes as Mr. Hoey, who's got the same house with no mortgage and $1 million in his checking account. I do. Is that fair?
That's good news. Can I sign
Now, the fact is, the real estate tax was created in a day when real estate ownership was a sign of wealth.
That's right.
People owned farms. There were no mortgages. The bigger the farm, the more the wealthier the person was, so the better it was based on ability to pay. That model went away when we went away from an agricultural society. The real estate, what the senior tax freeze was able to do, that no other town in the state of Connecticut has done as effectively as Guilford has, is build in at least one measure, one component of fairness into the real estate tax, and that is that there is at least an income means, a means testing based on income that almost no other town in the state of Connecticut has adopted. And would I support a complete reworking of the tax structure in the state of Connecticut that doesn't have the town, 93% dependent on the real estate tax, residential real estate tax? You bet. I'd be happy to do that. There should be 3 components to any tax structure: income, consumption, sales, and assets. Assets, not just real estate. Do I think that's going to happen anytime in my lifetime? There is not a chance that that's going to happen. It should, but it's not. And so I'm a believer that if we as a town of Guilford have the ability to do something good, but can't get to the perfect end, I'd rather do something good and let the next generation worry about the perfect end. It's no excuse for not doing something to help our seniors.
If you look at the statistics, I don't have it in front of me, and we did.
We did.
The people at the higher or the top echelon, or the ceiling of that income level, out of 800, were probably less than 5 or 10. I can't
Oh,
remember.
yeah, no, it was,
It was really, really close.
it was, there.
Well, I mean, let me just say, first of all, I want to make sure we agree that I didn't call you up to prep you on this before we got here.
You didn't need to.
No, and I really seriously appreciate that level of explanation. I can tell you, I've gotten more questions on this program than anything else. And not too many folks understand it, and I'll admit, I didn't completely understand it. I certainly didn't understand all the underlying rationales as well. I've asked about some of these, being on some of these committees before. I haven't had the luxury of doing that. It's very helpful to hear the thinking that goes into creating something like that. And you know, you may get the question again in another forum, and so we can have an opportunity to spread that around. It goes to our transparency argument. It's helpful to know why we're doing what we're doing as well as what we're doing.
Yeah, the other thing too is remember that what we were facing 10 years ago, Bill?
Yeah,
12, 10
12,
years ago?
yeah.
People older people, seniors, excuse me, had to sell their homes after living here 20, 30 years because they couldn't pay the tax. That wasn't right. And that's never right. A home that they bought maybe 40 years ago now appreciates because of its location and worth maybe close to $1 million.
Yeah.
They don't have the cash flow to pay those taxes. So what do? They have to sell it and move from a town that they contribute their time, their taxes, and help this town grow over 40 years because they can't pay the property tax. That was the reason that program was put in effect.
And Joe, I'm glad you mentioned that the number of participants who are at the high side of that income threshold is nominal, because
Not
It is.
quite honestly, and I've expressed this opinion in the past, there are families with young children trying to live and raise their children in Guilford at less than the top end of the exemption. All right? You have to set the threshold somewhere. You have to do that. And it will always be, you know, we chose the median household income. You know that the median is there's gonna be people well below that. All right? So it's always fair to say that threshold, that high threshold number, is open for discussion for a variety of reasons. It's good to hear that, you know, most of the players, most of the participants are significantly below that number.
The committee did look at that.
The distribution.
It did look at that, and that's how it was determined. The numbers are there from the assessor, what the breakout was.
And I think it's safe to say in 10 years, we haven't moved that number.
Not a bit.
And we don't anticipate moving that number either.
Is there any reason why we can't share those exact numbers?
Sure.
Because I'd be interested
they're
to see
fine.
those, and I think other people
That's
would like to
public
understand that.
information. We
And
get that for
that
you.
would give some comfort to folks who think
Now,
this
what
is
we
a
would-
little bit of a boondoggle, which it isn't.
No, what we
Oh,
would
not
get
at all.
for you is last application period, because now we're in the middle of this application
application.
period.
Sure.
Yeah, I
So
was
if you
just
want to
saying-
wait until the end, that's fine. Or we can give you last year's, I don't care.
Actually, one of the documents that we shared earlier had that information in it, didn't it?
About the increases?
No, the exemptions.
The distribution of the exemption, I don't remember seeing
I
that.
don't, we never seen that one.
Or is that
I have the
something
rules of the
something-
program here if you care to
Yeah,
pass
No,
them
I'm
about.
familiar with them, yeah.
The new information wouldn't be until when? May?
Yes,
That'd be
May,
fine.
Right,
Well,
May.
yes,
Wait
and
till
see what
May.
the-
And we
May
actually,
15th is the deadline.
The most recent information would be great,
Okay.
when it's available.
the committee needs to meet again,
Okay.
really, on some other issues too,
Yeah.
so we could actually put together a kind of an update and a status
Well, that would be
where we
great.
are. Yeah.
Trace, would you make a note for probably sometime in June? Okay.
Chairman, if we're going to vote on this issue, I'd like to make a very brief statement.
Certainly.
Generally, I do support Guilford's elderly tax relief program as a worthy vehicle to provide tax relief to our seniors. But I cannot support further increases in the funding in the program unless an exclusion based on assets or net worth is added. Program cost has increased approximately 7.65% per year since 2008. The roughly $1 million cost of tax relief provided by the program is not financed to reduce spending or increase revenue. It's simply distributed across the remainder of the tax base. The program currently excludes participation based on income, but in the absence of an asset test, taxpayers that qualify to have their property taxes frozen could potentially have assets in excess of $2 million. Because the additional tax burden to finance this program may fall on hardworking taxpayers with more difficult financial circumstances, I believe an asset test of some kind is warranted before additional funding is approved. Can I have a copy if you'd like?
Thank you. Any further discussion?
The only thing I will say is, I use my privileges
As an
Ex
ex
officio.
officio member?
is that, again, it does not impact the operating budget of this town. The difference is my taxes, you don't live here, your taxes and everybody else in this town
Lives here.
who's not part of the program.
Right.
And number two, the ordinance that created this program was created under a new state statute back in 10, 12 years ago. That does not, as far as I know, allow for asset test. So the state statute would have to be changed.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstain?
Abstain.
One abstention. Good, thank you. New business. Lou,
I have an item.
you have an item.
Mike and I had an opportunity to go to a conference held by the CCM. This was up in Southington, so we drove up to Southington. I must say we could have used a flying machine to get there. It's a long way. But they gave us, it was on municipal budget management, and here's a, we do have it. Here's a quick summary of some of the tips, pointers, and, you know, aphorisms really, that they kind of would use. I mean, this is one page. We had a book of
Binder for
of suggestions and hints and whatnot. On balance, it's pretty useful.
Okay.
And just figured I'd hand out this.
Thank you.
The only thing I want to add is,
Summary.
when you read this, you'll see that there's a lot of things, I would say a majority, that we are doing
we're already
correct.
doing.
And I wish she was still here, but I know Sheila and her department does a great job, and I think a lot of this is reflected. Be nice, maybe we should be an example that they point out, but it was very refreshing to know a lot of all the things that they brought up in this particular session we were already very familiar with in our town, so.
Yeah, I thought so.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else with new business? I have one, and this is in deference to Kimberly. Do we like this layout?
Not just Kimberly.
Do we like
I
this?
do like this.
Do we like?
I never get to see those guys. They're right on the other end of the table.
You know, you raise a good point.
second
You
it.
raise a good point, sure.
I do too, yeah, when you're on,
Right, when you-
as you're
right, you can't.
experiencing now.
And it's a hard time.
When you're on the edge,
You can
my
hardly
neck
hear
hurts
people at the
every
other end.
single, after every single meeting.
And it's hard to
I
see the
can't get my neck
speakers.
back around this way again.
Let's do it.
Agreed?
Let's do a horseshoe.
Give it a
I,
try. We could always try.
Can we have, could Tracy, you take that as an action item to talk to them about setting up some kind of,
You.
horseshoe, whatever?
right?
How's it work for you, Mike?
See what people are thinking.
Mike, how's it work for you?
I'm sold on that.
Hey, he doesn't have to turn this far. It's gonna save his elbow.
Tennis elbow, it goes away.
Excellent.
You're turning the camera more often, so you gotta be prepared for that.
Public forum, I doubt that.
Nobody's
none?
still awake.
Nobody's still. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Thank you.
You guys normally meet here?
No.